همگان شد. ما برای اینکه سرزمینمان را از چنگ جمهوری اسلامی در بیاوریم، از زاهدان تا کردستان تا تهران و دیگر شهرهای زخمی ایران باید همبسته و متحد بمانیم. همه ما خواهان برابری، رفع تبعیضها و عدم تکرار هر نوع ستمی در فردای ایران هستیم و با پذیرش تنوع و تکثر و احترام به هویت‌های گوناگون در ایران دموکراتیک فردا امروز در کنار هم می‌ایستیم. تنها دشمن مشترک ما و نیرویی که کمر به نابودی همه ما بسته جمهوری اسلامی است. ما ثابت کردیم که انقلابمان انقلاب همدلی و همبستگی است و آنچه همه ما می‌خواهیم دوستی و آزادی و برابری است. برای پیروزی باید همبسته و همدل بمانیم. نوک پیکانها در سراسر ایران باید تنها و تنها جمهوری اسلامی را نشانه بگیرد. ژن ژیان آزادی.
سلام، من این ویدیو رو میگیرم از طرف خودم و علی کریمی. شما ما دو نفر رو سالهاست که میشناسین. جایگاهی که امروز من و علی داریم در واقع به خاطر لطف بی‌دریغ و بی انتهای تمام شما عزیزانه. ما سیاستمدار نیستیم ولی امروز صدای شما رو با تمام قدرتمون فریاد میزنیم، انعکاس میدیم. تنها صدای شما رو. نه سهمی از این انقلاب میخوایم و نه جایگاهی. سهم و جایگاه امروز از آن مردم ایرانه، از آن مردمی که 44 سال گروگان گرفته شدن در این حکومت. ما تنها انعکاس صدای شما هستیم. امروز فصل مشترک و هدف تمام گروه ها با هر عقیده و مرامی سرنگونی و گذار از جمهوری اسلامیه. هر فرد گروهی اگر عقیده یا طرحی برای گذار کم هزینه از نشر جمهوری اسلامی داره میتونه مطرح کنه. در غیر این صورت مطرح کردن شکل و نوع حکومت برای فردای ایران یک نوع خیانت به جانباختگان و زندانیان دربند در درون ایران حساب میشه. همه ما امروز وظیفه داریم حول محور سقوط جمهوری اسلامی عمل بکنیم و این موضوع اتحاد و انسجام همه ما رو تضمین میکنه. مطرح کردن ایده ها و افکار شخصی در این زمان حساس پیرامون شکل حکومت فردای ایران ما رو قطعاً به سمت پراکندگی و واگرایی سوق میده. اگر همه ما به مردم سالاری و دموکراسی پایبندیم، انتخاب فردا رو به زمانش به عهده مردم خواهیم گذاشت. اون روز نظرهای ما یکسان نخواهد بود، ولی این معنی دموکراسی و آزادیه و جمهوری اسلامی تمرین دموکراسی و آزادی رو به ما یاد نداده، به خاطر اینکه تمام این 44 سال برنامه‌اش این بوده که بین ما تفرقه بندازه، ما رو با هم بد بکنه و خودش حکومت بکنه. ولی این زمان رسیده که ما خودمون دموکراسی و آزادی رو تمرین بکنیم. بنابراین هر کس یا هر گروهی به شکلی عمل کنه یا صحبتی بکنه که سبب اختلاف در اپوزیسیون بشه، داره به طور عمدی یا سهواً خیانت میکنه. ما میتونیم به 4 اصل پایبند باشیم. یکیش اتحاد و همبستگی همه افراد حول فروپاشی ملاست. 2 از خودگذشتگی و عبور از منیت در مقابل رأی اکثریت. 3 واگذاری انتخاب نو و شکل حکومت فردای ایران به رأی اکثریت. و 4 تشکیل و به رسمیت شناختن شورای گذار. این شورا نه سهمی خواهد داشت نه هیچ چیز. این شورا فقط در واقع داره راه مردم رو هموار میکنه برای گذار از جمهوری اسلامی. ما هنرمندا وظیفمون الهام بخشیدن خط و مشی دادن نیست و اینکه صدای شما رو با تمام قدرت به بلندترین شکل فریاد بزنیم، انقدر هماهنگش بکنیم که این صدا بتونه دیوار جمهوری اسلامی رو بریزه. این کار ماست و اون کاری که من 4 ماه دارم سعی میکنم انجام بدم. و در اون روز انتخاب، وقتی اون روز انتخاب میرسه، ما قطعا هممون یک چیز رو نخواهیم خواست، ولی اون روز زیباترین روز ایران خواهد بود، به خاطر اینکه برای اولین بار ما دیگه به خاطر تفاوت‌هامون با هم نمی جنگیم، بلکه تفاوت‌ها و اختلاف نظرهامون رو جشن میگیریم. در نهایت این مردم هستند که انتخاب خواهند کرد، نه ما. و تا اون روز هدف همگی ما تنها سرنگونی نظام و گذار از جمهوری اسلامی خواهد بود. زنده باد زن، زندگی، آزادی.
زن، زندگی، آزادی.
Woman, life, freedom. In the name of woman, life, freedom. All these people that you see here, the voices you heard, we've had meetings for togetherness and creating a charter in the name of unity for freedom of Iran. And soon this charter will be given to you. This time, this is the text that we have written, and I will be reading this for you. I am a little bit stressed for the first time, and I confess. Before we start, I wanted to express our sympathy with the people of Khoi and the people of Turkey and Syria for the fearsome earthquakes. And we wish them speedy recovery for these deep wounds. On the 16th of September last year, the 25th of Shahrivar, the Iranian calendar, a 22-year-old girl named Mahsa Jina Amini, who had traveled to Tehran from Saqqez just because of her improper hijab. The regime in Iran murdered her. And we remember her funeral, that a magical hand wrote on her tombstone, Jina, her name will become the code for our revolution. And that became so. Name of Jina became the code for a huge revolution, the revolution of woman, life, freedom. From Kurdistan to Tehran to Baluchistan to Mazandaran, Kermanshah, Isfahan, Khuzestan, Lorestan, Gilan, across the country, with a deep revolution joined with this revolution. A revolution that became famous as a revolution of women, but was supported by men and went beyond the borders. And it's still alive. The entire country of Iran considers itself the part of this revolution. Women stood up against discrimination. Men from Kurdistan to Baluchistan, from Khuzestan to Azerbaijan and Baluchistan, everyone wants their rights. Laborers, teachers, and pensioners are speaking about their violated rights. Low-income families speak about social freedom. And religious minorities and atheists are seeking truth, and they are seeking their rights. Sexual minorities and gender minorities, and speak about oppression. Athletes and movie makers, they don't want to be instruments in the hands of the regime that normalizes crime. In the revolution of woman, life, freedom, diversity became a rainbow of Kian Pir Falak, a rainbow that rose from the bottom of the hell of the Islamic Republic to the skies. The Islamic Republic, however, responded to these people with gallows and bullets. The Islamic Republic killed more than 500 people, shot at the eyes of young people to prove that it had not killed one person, Mahsa Amini. Iranian people did not remain silent. They, in many cities across the country and in cities outside Iran, they stood up and poured onto the streets in solidarity. The world heard the voice of our modern revolution and bowed in respect. From the first days, the word solidarity, like the word, like Mahsa Amini's name, became the code and spread in the name of unity and against a common enemy, the Islamic Republic, the regime of Islamic Republic. And from that day, activists, Iranian activists across, inside Iran and outside Iran, they began to work to find a way to decide how to bring various mindsets and parties, different factions, to bring the end of this regime possible. But for unity, we must agree on minimal principles. In the days that the Iranian revolution is preparing itself for bigger waves, we are working to complete this charter, to produce it in a joint charter. A charter that can include all the demands of the people, something that that relies on the Declaration of Human Rights, something that relies on equality and accepts the territorial integrity of Iran and reaffirms decentralization of power. Principles that represent all Iranian people and echoes the voice of the revolution of woman, life, freedom. A charter that can prevent the reoccurrence of the past tragedies. Now this charter, we're getting closer to the completion of this charter, and we're hoping to produce it by the end of February. And alongside this, we think the efforts of foreign governments to isolate this regime. We also want the freedom of political prisoners so that they can act freely. These are our main objectives. We all know that the fall of the Islamic regime is not only going to free an old civilization into a free nation, but will also bring peace and security to the region. And countries like Iraq, Syria, and Venezuela, and even in the heart of Europe, and even in Europe, Europe will be clear, will be obvious. The world must prepare itself for a day without the Islamic Republic. We are here to speak about that day, to say that the people of Iran are seeking a freedom and democracy. They want a government that sends the message of peace instead of terror. We are here to tell that the country of Iran will be a safer place for Iran, for women who will no longer suffer from discrimination. In the name of woman, life, freedom.
Hello, I greet you all and all the beloved people of Iran, particularly those families who over the past 5 months have lost their loved ones unjustly, and have joined those freedom fighters who over the past 44 years have been searching for the truth and who have been seeking the implementation of justice. I will speak very briefly at the beginning before the other friends. I will say that this revolution, I consider this revolution based on 4 principles: freedom, true justice, social justice, and environmental justice. Everybody represents this revolution in some way. Women, students, from Kurdistan to Azerbaijan, from Balochistan to Mazandaran, all are seeking equal rights. Students, sexual minorities, laborers, teachers, artists, writers, sportsmen, all are part of this revolution. And of course, those seeking justice. Those justice seekers who want, after the Islamic Republic, to create commissions of inquiry so that all the crimes of the Islamic Republic, going back to Cinema Rex, to the murders of the 1980s, until the Green Movement, the student movements, and after that, December of 2017-18, and then the Ukrainian flight, those who've been tortured and murdered. It is expected that the truth will come to light for all Iranians, and all the wounds of our land will be healed. I will end my talk now, and I will ask Ms. Beniadi to proceed.
Thank you, the University of Georgetown, for making this meeting possible, because our revolution is a global revolution. Please allow me to say a few words in English in respect for the people who are here.
And I'm very proud and honored to be sitting with my friends here and those you've seen virtually to set aside any differences and unite on a common cause, which is democracy, and a secular democracy and plurality for Iran. Young 9-year-old Kian Pirfalak mentioned a rainbow before he was brutally killed by the Islamic Republic. And to many of us here, that rainbow represents plurality, the type of plurality he was denied, and the people of Iran continue to be denied. So our gathering here is just a start as we come up with a charter to hopefully have a unified guideline and ideas for moving forward towards secular democracy. And it will hopefully lead to a larger movement with more people based on maximum support for the Iranian people and maximum inclusion. Again, things that have been denied to all of us for 44 years. And I hope that this can be the start of something that brings sustainable, a substantive change to our homeland.
My fellow countrymen, in these 42 years of fighting for the freedom of our country, I just want to say one thing today. I hope that all of you will think about this and the experiences of the past 42 years. This is not just limited to Iran. It is also seen in other countries. Basically, I see two classes or categories of people in the world. The first are those who still hold on to hatreds and are part of the problem and resist. They resist any kind of collaboration, and I have nothing to do with that first group. The second group are all those who want to be a part of the solution, who want to work together, who know that in many areas they may have differences of opinion. And this difference of opinion does not mean enmity. if the basis of our work is based on those who want to work for a better future, for a common purpose, a common destiny, the time has come now to consider our priorities, to put aside our differences, and to think about the basis of our goal, which is freedom and pride and the governance of our people. We must work towards it in the hope that that day, the day when our country will be free, every citizen in Iran, whatever their intellectual or religious or ethnic background may be, they should know that they will be equal before the law and they will be able to live in perfect freedom and work towards constructing Iran, that they will all stand together. This is our message to our fellow countrymen and to the world. The time has come to put aside slogans, to roll up our sleeves, and to begin our work. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your attention. And in contrast to Islamic Republic press conferences, this is meant to be an exercise in democracy building. So there's no questions which are off limits today. And I look forward to all the questions from the journalists, the many journalists in the room. And I'll start briefly with a question for all of you, and you can feel free to answer in Persian or in English, whatever you're most comfortable with. But let me start with Ahmed John on the outside, which is there's a lot of Western officials in particular who are skeptical that this revolution is still alive. How do you respond to them?
If I may, I speak in Farsi.
Because in order to see whether the Islamic Revolution is alive, this revolution is alive or not, we have to look at the past experiences, particularly the contemporary revolutions. Our land has experienced at least one revolution in the past 40, 50 years, and all of us know that revolutions have ups and downs. It's not, it doesn't always move, not happen in 2 months or 2 days or one night. Sometimes revolutions can collapse, can fall, but then it returns with higher waves. There is a certain place where the change becomes inevitable, and that is there is no turning back towards the past. I see this change in the December of 2017 when protests passed beyond the borders of the Islamic Republic and was no longer within the framework of the government. And there was talk of transitioning from the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic thought that by killing people it could stop this movement. It's the only weapon they have. They respond to everything with weapons. And in November of 2019, they tried to suppress the demand for justice and the quest for freedom. And they shut down the internet, and they killed 1,500 people. They slaughtered them in Iran, from the marshes to the streets, the different provinces, different cities. There were protests, and they dealt with them unmercifully. The people were no longer afraid, however, and if the people were going to be afraid, in the past 4 or 5 months, we would not have seen people on the streets. We would not have seen the students in the streets. We would not have seen the women at the forefront. The fear is gone. The feeling that we will not return to the past exists in all of us. I think it would be very simple to think that this revolution, that the people have now passed beyond this revolution. No, the people are very angry, and they're waiting for the next wave. And the next wave will come, and it will be heavier. And the activity that we're doing these days, maybe there will be calmer days, but that's because people are planning and organizing for the next waves. I think that on 16th of September, when this happened, the opponents of the Islamic Republic were not prepared, but we can use this opportunity to organize, to plan, so that when the next wave of the revolution comes, the intervals become smaller, all of us will be ready. We will all be ready to transition away from the Islamic Republic. Thank you. Masih.
How are you coordinating with forces inside the country for the strength of this movement? به انگلیسی به فارسی میتونی پاسخ بدین.
I would like to say one thing first, and that is this revolution is not dead, but the regime has fallen. It is dead in the hearts of the people. But in the world community, we face this question. They think that if the people are on the streets, this is a revolution. And we have a responsibility to tell the world that a revolution has many different forms. And one of the forms is when people are on the streets. But when people come to the streets and the government shoots at people, rapes female prisoners, and when they threaten women with rape or shoot at their eyes, when they arrest the families of prisoners and they bring them on TV for forced confessions, when they execute protesters, we must tell the world that the revolution is alive. And if the people are not in the streets, it is because of your shortfalls. I would like to say this in English.
It means that you have to see how long you need to see bloodshed in the street. Then you're convinced that this is a revolution. So this is our responsibility to convince the rest of the world that we should not wait for people to get killed. We should take strong actions. And this is a challenge that I think, as all of us believe and wrote in our declaration, we have to convince the leaders of democratic countries to get united, isolate the Islamic Republic, and legitimize this modern revolution. سوال شما هم یادم رفت.
همکاری با داخل
مردم داخل کشور در واقع
people inside the country are our inspiration. They are our hope. Many people ask us, what are we doing to inspire the people? They look at various campaigns that we have, like the White Wednesdays. But the Iranian young people are teaching us. They're telling us that the reformism or principalism are dead, and they are telling us that they are ready to come to the streets, and they are inspiring us, telling us that from Kurdistan to various parts of Iran, they are telling us this is our responsibility to unite and bring the leaders of various countries. My last sentence. Dictators like Putin, Maduro, and these dictators help each other. It is our responsibility to tell democratic countries to learn from the dictators. The Islamic Republic is a virus. It inflicts various countries in the world.
Arpijan, you have more experience than anyone here in that you've been advocating for secular democracy for 4 decades now. And I wanted to ask you a two-part question. The first is, what is perhaps the most important lesson you've learned over the last 4 decades? And what are the next steps of these groups of individuals, the next steps you plan to take in your advocacy?
Thank you. Well, I'll try to be brief because we could speak for hours about the subject. The most important thing that I have learned is, and we see models of success in all democratic countries, that for democracy to prevail and survive in the long term, it is not sufficient to simply have institutions and structures. That's the obvious. What's important is to establish a new culture of diversity and tolerance. That doesn't come overnight. I have no worries that Iranians will find a path to self-determination and democracy and pluralism. I'm not sure if the culture is quite there yet. The day that we succeed to finally establish that culture of accepting diversity and tolerance, that's where democracy in Iran would be forever lasting. And in that we need help. We need help of civil society, we need help of university centers. It's an educational process. Media has an extremely important role to play in all this. And I think that when I traveled around the world and I've seen for societies where its citizens have an opportunity to fully participate in the affairs of their government, they cannot simply rely on those in charge. It is their civil responsibility to watch for their rights, because it's never handed to them automatically. That is part of that culture I'm talking about. And I'm not using this as a slogan. I really believe in people's power, and we've seen that around the world. And in that sense, and going back to the question you asked, Hamed, when some people are suggesting that a movement is slowing down, maybe it's the end of it, it really is offensive. Imagine if somebody has said, Martin Luther King was assassinated, so the civil rights movement is dead. Was it? No. Not only didn't die, it succeeded. Because when people are inspired in a just cause, nothing can stop that. And for us, our survival, our future, and every opportunity that will come depends on, first and foremost, relying on ourselves. And my message to the world has always been throughout the years, we don't expect anything from you in the sense of not relying on our own device. However, if you side with us, if you're on the right side of history, you will bring down the cost that we have to pay for our freedom by standing with us, as opposed to yet again throwing us under the bus. That's our message to the world, and why world solidarity is important, because not only it's a win-win scenario, they will benefit from it too. And I'll get to that later. I will stop on these general points.
Well, thank you. That's a good segue to my final question before I open it up to all of you for Nازنین, which was that in 1979 was an earthquake which changed the world in many negative ways. And the success of this movement, how could it be an earthquake that changes the world in potentially very positive ways? And what are your expectations collectively from Western governments to help your cause?
I want to touch on something that Masih said that is very important, and that is, and it also something that Anne Applebaum wrote in a cover story for The Atlantic last year, I believe it was, where she talked about authoritarians uniting far more than democracies uniting. So my hope is that we can create forge a transatlantic basically a union or partnership vis-a-vis Iran. That nothing is done in an isolated way where the US and the UK and the EU and Canada and all these Western countries that are independently trying to forge policies are not working alone, but in partnership with each other. What that does, and it also has to come from the voices inside Iran. And because we are in touch with civil society inside Iran, with dissidents and families of those imprisoned, we hope to be able to relay those messages to lawmakers internationally, but more so to have them come up with strategic ways to work together to bring about democracy and secularism. And when we, at a time, I think, where you see that oil exports are increasing from Iran to China, we have to be aware that that increase in the money that's going into Iran is actually helping fund the repression inside the country. So we have to find policies internationally that cut off the funding of that repression, isolate the country. Again, alluding to what I was saying before, maximum support for the people, and policies really that empower civil society inside Iran and disempower the Islamic Republic.
Thank you so much. So, thank you. Our first question goes to Samira Qarayev from Iran International. If you can be as concise as possible in your questions. I mean, I know some of you, but if not, please introduce yourselves and we can get through as many questions as possible. Thank you, please.
My question is to you all. There is a controversial issue we keep hearing about, and that is the support from the opposition from the people of Iran. What kind of role is this support going to take? Is this going to guide the people or just support them? This charter that you're talking about, are you officially taking the leadership role, or are we supposed to wait for calls for more serious acts like even strikes? And more, we are seeing that foreign governments are supporting you, especially Ms. Allینژاد and Mr. Pehlevi. You have been invited to the Munich Security Council conference. Are you planning to continue these activities, or are you expecting more support? And what do you think is the effect of this support from you on the revolution of Iranian people? You asked 3 questions. I'm going to start from the last. Yes, one of the things that we have mentioned in this charter that is pressure on the foreign governments. Let me tell you in an honest way, the world has heard enough that human rights status in Iran is horrible. The world knows that it is facing ISIS in the Islamic Republic. But what the world does not know is that it doesn't know who to talk to. Now I am proud to say that we can show this unity, and our foreign trips will be together in the form of a united opposition. In any form you can imagine, the global community must see us standing up to the regime in Iran. And as Mr. Macron said that he is prepared to meet with opposition groups. Now it took some time, and now we wanted to come to an agreement. The global community must see that we want a secular democratic government. The world must see what our agenda is, that we want to, what kind of program we have for the diversity of Iran. The next step for us after this is to meet with Western countries. We will pressure them to hear our voice and be prepared to see a world without the Islamic Republic.
If I'm going to answer part of your question, the revolution must happen inside of Iran. The change, where that change must happen is inside Iran. If we look at the past 5 months and over the past 2 years, the young generation is the guide of these protests in Iran. In their view, those who were born in the 2000s, those who are seeing this program, if I'm mistaken, please correct me, but they want to completely overthrow the social norms. There may be other views, which depends on saving the current system with minimal changes. There may be another point of view that my generation, the parents of this generation, we think of them as the gray generation. They are worried about things like anarchy, about the country falling apart, about tyranny. We must remove these worries. In their mind, these worries don't exist. If we can lower the costs of this revolution with the help of the people, and these are the non-violent movements. I'm very pleased that Dr. Farhad Meysami has been released today. He had been in jail for a long time, and he was on a hunger strike. And I saw that he was also active in non-violent movements. In my view, we must follow this path together with the help of activists within Iran. All the guidance and even this group that's gotten together here has been with the help of activists inside of Iran. We're not going to name any because we don't want to put them in danger. But I want to give you the assurance that all the guidance and even the text is coming from within Iran. And if we have had a role, it is only to put this forward to a discussion. We're at the final stages, and I hope we will all come to an agreement. The discussions we've had over territorial integrity, about tyranny after revolution, we must consider all of this. But these are not serious concerns. The main thing we have to focus on, instead of political contests, which normally happens after revolution, our focus must be on overthrowing the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is something we have to agree on, we have to plan for, and in my view, if this group can begin this process, and we must invite others as well, especially the role of specialists in this area. You talked about protests, about strikes. We cannot ask workers who are living a difficult life to have strikes without planning, without any results, because in order to bring the revolution to fruition, it has to be with the help of specialists, with strategic points, with strategic locations, with a certain timetable, and with the help of various networks within Iran. This requires planning. I'm not talking about years, but at least weeks and months. And now all of the specialists who are, I hope that we can create platforms and invite such specialists so that we can focus on such views.
دم رفت بگم و فکر می‌کنم به این سوالتون مربوطه. When we talk about, what we're demanding or asking of foreign lawmakers, leaders, I think it's important when policies pass and we see sanctions, strategic sanctions pass, that we also enforce those sanctions. So when we see these new resolutions come about, and it's very important that we back them up and we support them. But what's even more important is that the existing sanctions are enforced, because unless we're taking away the lifeline from the regime, they will continue their brutal crackdown and repression. So I would encourage people to think of that. And introducing new legislation is very important, but enforcing current legislation is also equally important.
When we have such a huge task ahead of us, clearly distribution of responsibility and roles are also very important. And one thing that the world needs to understand is that we have quite many specialists, experts, planners in the field of law, in the field of economy, in the field of environmental issues, and so many more, that can not only lay the path towards a transition to the future, but also a roadmap to recovery of the country at the end of the day. برمیگردم به فارسی. تقسیم کار خیلی مهمه. بزرگترین کمکی
It is really important to distribute the responsibilities. Those of us who have taken steps along this road and have coordinated, and with the full agreement of the fighters within the country, social activists, political prisoners, the basis of the things that you will see in this charter are on the basis of their wants and their expectations. That's how we're putting it together. And the first phase, it will be to convey these wants. Those who within the country cannot speak freely, they have given us the mission to be their voice along on the global scene. The second point is to help all the necessary mechanisms, as Hamed pointed out, which is a requirement of the work beyond the values which we must agree on. How do we want to do this? This discrimination that foreigners or even you, the media, ask, what are these requirements? Who are they? You will see these in action. We are constantly looking at this. We're constantly speaking about this. A lot of this is coming from within, from university campuses, from among specialists and the private sector. And the distribution of labor is so important, that it's so necessary, that you will not see one limited group of people is going to give you the whole story. The important thing is that we must be able to work together constantly and in all our decision making and implementing whatever the programs may be, whether it is about resistance, whether it's about strengthening, and especially about the time of transition after the fall of the regime. How are we going to deal with these problems? In the first 100 days, how is the country going to be governed? What is the transitional government in terms of providing for the needs of the people? You cannot shut down hospitals. You cannot shut down water and electricity. We must speak about each of these issues, and specialists have looked at this, or they're looking at them. And our main help is to distribute this work and to coordinate, and of course to inform the world. And here we depend on the key role that the media play in bringing this information to the world. So that we don't rely solely on cyberspace. One of the things that the regime wants to do is to shut down the internet. It wants to be like North Korea. I hope that doesn't happen. And fortunately, there are some people who are working to ensure that the internet connection doesn't get shut down. This is vital. So the satellite channels that can be a help in bringing about this, they will be playing a key role. You must not look at yourselves only as observers. You now have a larger role than just providing reports. You can be a help. Khashayar Junaidi, BBC Persian. Thank you very much. I want to thank Georgetown and Mr. Sajjadpour. This gives many people a chance. This was an opportunity that many protesters were waiting for this. When we had the ceremony for the downing of the Ukraine airliner in Canada, Mr. Ismailian was there, and the Iranian protesters were calling for justice. Now we're seeing this this coordination. The protesters have spoken about this. Now you're talking about a common charter, about planning for the future. If you wanted to say what points give you hope, or give the protesters in Iran, what can increase their hope? What are those points? And another question that I have is, over the past few days, we have seen Mir Hossein Mousavi issue a statement about passing beyond the Islamic Republic. This seems very similar to the charter that Ms. Alleinژاد was speaking about. How much space do you see for cooperation in this coalition that is forming, based on contacts you have within the country? How far do you think there's acceptability for such cooperation? Of course, the part where Nازنین was speaking on the international scene, there are two key factors: the maximum pressure on the regime and maximum support from the people of Iran. But among ourselves, the Iranians, what we're talking about is maximum participation. Why is this important? Because the more we can cause defections from this regime, the road will be paved for the freedom of Iran. And all those people who can be a part of this scenario and who have accepted, who have agreed that we have reached our result, the result that this regime cannot be reformed and there is no way out of this dead end, we have created a formula for a secular Iran for the future. Of course, we will welcome that, and that will get us there more quickly. The regime that over the past 44 years has always has drawn sharp lines. The regime that has always created separation between those inside the country and those outside. The regime that has always talked about choosing between the bad and the worse. And now fundamentalists, reformists are, that game is over. It could not have been said more clearly. What is more important in this is this gray group. If it comes along with us within social movements, the role of the law enforcement without having to worry about anarchism. It will make their task easier, that they can join in as well, and they can be a shield to protect the people against state repression, and the state will have to give in. We can only do this when we have maximum participation.
I want to make a quick comment in English, and that is that the regime has stayed in power for 44 years because of the divisions it has created between us. If there was one driving force or motivating force for us to unite, it's to debunk this idea that we are so divided that we can't work together towards democracy. Because that's what the regime will have you believe, that we are so fragmented that we can't even go to foreign leaders and ask for a single thing that is achievable. And so while we've been meeting with lawmakers independently, the idea is that we can come together and have a plan in place. And that plan includes everybody who wants democracy, a secular democracy and pluralism for Iran.
And I want to add something to what you asked about the leadership. I've been repeating that for years and years in my meeting with the leaders of democratic countries, that the true leaders who can run the country better than these backward mullahs are those who are in prison, like, Majid Tawakkoli, like Hossein Ronaqi, like Nasrin Sotoudeh, Narges Mohammadi, many of them, like all the, Ismail Bakhshi, Abdi. I have a long list here from different cities. But what we have to show the leaders of democratic countries, that you cannot go and negotiate with them, but we are here to echo their voice. We are here to leading what they cannot lead inside Iran because they go easily to jail. من چرا دارم به شما به انگلیسی جواب میدم. همه حرفم اینه که واقعا
I don't have your courage to say that I support Mir Hossein Mousavi's statement, because many people will protest because this man was, he must be prosecuted for the crimes that took place during his government. But he must be prosecuted for those crimes. But the truth is that yes. I can truly say that only revolutions have succeeded when there have been defections among their elite or the people within the regime, the IRGC, for example, or the army. And good, I'm glad that you mentioned that Mr. Mousavi has also said it. I want to say something that my mother said. This tree of dictatorship, although we are striking against it, but it is also falling apart from within. It is the worst thing is that the people who were part of this regime are now making it fall. And it's so good that many people said it. From the past. I have voted for this government because I was under this illusion that I could vote and access freedom. But I have come to this understanding that we must support these statements, but there should be truth-seeking committees about those crimes.
I will speak very briefly. Yes, we must welcome these forces who have gone from reformism to overthrow. All of us must reform our ways. Secularism is very important, and I hope in the future we will see that all of these things that we see, all the aspects we see in the Iranian Revolution, will show up in the future messages from him, Mirza Mousavi. As far as giving hope to the people of Iran, you know that after 44 years, the Islamic Republic has left a scorched earth. The environment in Iran is destroyed. Thousands of people have died. And in my view, the IRGC is one of the main causes for this. We must try, whatever in our efforts that we make, we must put this institution, this criminal institution, in the list of terrorist groups. There are a lot of activities going on. On 20th February, I believe there will be demonstrations in Brussels, which can help to perpetuate this issue. As far as dissolving the IRGC, I hope there's been a lot of talk. I hope we will discuss it in our charter as well, that an institution, that a criminal institution that has been the weapon, a tool of repression for ethnic groups, for minorities, for all the people who have been after freedom. This should be in the charter, but we should also have a mechanism to bring it about. There's a lot of talk about it. I want to point out that along the borders, they are shooting at porters. Even though they themselves are peers in the country, and they're engaged in smuggling, you know, there's corruption in the IRGC. But we hear that people, those who have not committed crimes, should turn back towards the people. Without a mechanism, this is not possible. I hope that the legal activists who are working on this outside of the country, I hope that in the first few months they can come to some kind of arrangement for transition. Without this, some of this may be worrisome, especially for the victims of the IRGC. All of this, we should look at the experiences of other countries like Rwanda, Yugoslavia, other countries. This must be codified. And I just want to say that some things will take time. But ultimately, the result will be in Tina Ghazi Murad, Marato Television.
In this meeting, you have talked about unity, but in this meeting there are no representatives from religious minorities or other minorities. Is this right, in your opinion, not to have invited any representatives except for Mr. Motadi? What is the difference between him and all other minorities? Why was he present and others weren't?
I can answer this. As far as pluralism and diversity, we're not eliminating anybody. It is to bring people along. These are the first steps. I believe you must wait. We will try. We will try to talk to everybody, to all the groups, to all the points of view. And this is a part of our agenda. The revolution it's round-the-clock work. And many have been doing this for several years, and some have only joined it the past few months. We must spend a lot of time talking to people, and we must begin somewhere. And it can be said that we must make plans to bring other people and other individuals and other parties that you've talked about. I hope that in the days and months future, the social institutions in Iran will gain power. We want to empower them, and this requires organization. The revolution requires organization. We must have these things so that other institutions can take shape in the future months, and no one is talking about closed doors.
Let me say one thing. See, this revolution started from Kurdistan. I'm glad you asked this important question, and that other minorities should have been invited. And this is our responsibility. And I am glad that your outlet is asking a question about the empty place of these minorities. Let me tell you something. When we started this Freedom Congress with Mr. Garry Kasparov, who are, among other leaders, opposition leaders, they have been saying that as they say, they have divided opposition. It's true that dictators do the same thing. It's like they follow each other and they create divisions amongst us. So therefore, what we did there for that Congress, we were just a few people, but when it takes shape and it was organized, myself and Mr. Kasparov and someone else from Zimbabwe and Ukraine, see what happened now. We have networks, as Mr. Ismailian and others said. This is the beginning of our unity, like that global Congress. We want to bring on board and invite various networks and groups, and thank you for your good question, for encouraging this. I just wanted to say something really quickly. What gives me hope in the past few weeks, we have been in touch with each other. These divisions that you see on social media and in media, no, these do not exist amongst us. This gives me power, this gives me hope that these walls that the Islamic Republic has created, these are only they do not exist. The more we can encourage this mentality, that this is truly the mentality of dictators, that they have created divisions amongst us. And I hope that as time passes, this dissolves.
Of course, I see it a little bit differently. Not that I have a difference of opinion, but I believe the basis of your question is not correct, because the basis is not an invitation, it's participation. We have to be proactive, not reactive. This is a free bus. You don't have to buy a ticket. But as for when I'm going to get on the bus or solve my problems, it depends on you. There is no need for invitation. Anytime people want to, they can join. The door is open, and for anyone. The gray class of people may come next year. Some have already got on the bus. Therefore, the basis for participation is not waiting for an invitation. The door is open. The only thing is what we're saying is the basis for participation is accepting participation. Without that, we cannot work.
اتوبوس مجانی هشتگ خوبیه به نظر من.
I believe free bus is a good hashtag. But it's not about free or not free. Kambiz Tavana, VOA Persian. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you, if possible, please answer in Persian, and all of you please participate. Considering that you have begun a movement and you are declaring it today, I wanted to ask, before you started this, what basis, what indicators were you thinking about to agree on first, and then to use those and have you also talked about those with people outside of your circle? And what have they responded? How have they responded? And if you have, and if they've responded no, how can you bring those people in, those who have said no, and those who have not wanted to join you? How can you invite them to participate and join you, and to come along with you? And I also wanted to add that can you give an undertaking to all those people who are following you and listening to your voice that transparency will be one of your fundamental principles? I'm in trouble. See, look here, friends. The methodology, if I can use that as a word, is constant dialogue. It's constant exchange of views. The planning on the basis of decision making of joint wisdom. We may not agree on every single thing, which is okay. That happens. What is important is that we not lose the momentum. What is important that the people on this bus grow in number. The time depends on themselves. We have nothing to hide. From the very beginning, we are saying what the principles are. Contrary to what happened in 1979, we are. How many of Khomeini's aims did the people of Iran know about back then? In fact, we are trying as far as possible to describe the alternatives, to define the differences between what we want and what exists, considering that we have differences of opinion and our taste. The future of Iran, as Gulshifte said in her message, then we may not agree on everything, but the biggest day in Iran will be the day when we will all be able to enjoy our democratic rights in Iran. But currently, in the situation where we are, the discussion is not over what's going to happen tomorrow, because the democratic process, a constitutional assembly, creation of parties to be ready after the final choice of the people of Iran for the form of their government, the choice of a parliament, of parties. But today, we are not competing with each other. We're not trying to seize control of leadership of this movement. We're representing a big force to oppose the Islamic Republic. We have all reached the conclusion that so long as this regime is in power, we will not reach that shore of salvation. We have to pass. We have to transition beyond this. There are only two conditions. Either we will have great international support and more cooperation from political forces within and outside the country and all the social forces and this gray group of people that I've been talking about, and so that Khamenei and his people will no longer have a basis to continue. They will be forced to leave power, or that there will be so much pressure on them from within that the system will be paralyzed. That's when we talk about strikes, labor strikes, as a nonviolent method. Now, all of us, none of us has a crystal ball that we can foresee the future, but we can look at different scenarios, see which one can be least costly for Iran, but it will be based on realities. So let me say briefly, at this point in the work, all our force, all our pressure will be to bring pressure on the Islamic Republic. And all the forces that participate will be a part of the solution as well. The priority is always important, and in this phase of the battle, our priority is to to accept that there will be differences of opinion, but the only decision-making body and the only body where the elected representatives of the people can make decisions is the parliament. And we are saying that where we talk about concentration or decentralization, wherever wherever there is no complete agreement, we hand it over to the parliament to decide. We're not coming here to settle the policies. We're not going to make decisions for society beforehand. If you believe in these principles, let the process get to that point. Until we get there, we have to create the basis for it. And we know that the Islamic Republic will not hold a referendum. It will never give people the right to hold a free election. And, you know, free elections have a definition. An interparliamentary commission has described this. It's a global thing. And these conditions must exist in Iran. And that is what we're moving towards. But now our condition is to concentrate on overthrow and not just our countrymen, but the global community. You must know that there are the freedom-loving people of Iran who are looking at the free world, who are looking at the democratic world. They are your best partners. But you still insist on negotiating with people who are the first cause for the imprisonment of our countrymen. And I want to tell you that if you insist on negotiating with this regime, that is actually intervention in the internal affairs of the country. And if you continue in this policy, that you insist on negotiating with this regime, with people who are criminals, you will be partners in crime. And the people of Iran will not forget this. Make your decision. Where will you stand? Where will you stand as far as history goes? These are our points of concentration. We're not focusing on differences of opinion. Yeah, for sure, we're going to have those differences of opinion. We're not all going to be thinking the same. But most of the people of Iran agree that the only path to freedom is to overthrow the Islamic Republic. That's where we're all going to stand together. We're going to work together with forces within, with forces outside the country, and our message to the world and our want from the global community. I just want to say, the question was a little personal as to why people have joined this group. I can explain my reasons. Seeking justice is important for me. And this, of course, extends to others who have lost people. And justice is really important. And also the democratic movement of Iran, which took shape 115 years ago, from a demand for a House of Justice to today, this was important for me to consider myself a part of this group. And ultimately, you cannot satisfy everyone. That's a principle, but you can satisfy the majority of the people. If we were going to talk about the text, this is not the goal. It's the means to an end, and it is after that we can reach our objective through organization. The text that most Iranians can see themselves within it, and see the various points of view. But ultimately, you're asking with whom we've shared this. With Iran. We've shared it with Iran. That Iran is where that is guiding this process, that began this process and is guiding the process. And I am hopeful that activists outside the country can also consider themselves based on the message from Iran.
Add something here. We all know, everyone here, that many people outside Iran have written many charters like this, and they have sent their charters to us. For us, we know there may be mistakes in these charters. We have agreed to focus on each and every one of them, coming from the people who have paid the price, the people who are the true inspiration of this revolution. We have thought of asking legal experts. We have spent hours and hours in consultation. Let me tell you something. The divisions that the Islamic Republic is talking about, these do not exist amongst us. I promise you that noble people really want this charter. We are working very hard to not see those divisions. We only have one common enemy, and that is the Islamic regime. This is the Islamic regime has managed to create, turn us into wandering islands. But what we want, young people in Iran, to hold our hands. We are not political figures. There are many great people inside Iran. We have come together only because a number of people inside Iran. The experiences Mr. Pehlevi has had, many people on the streets of Iran have called Mr. Pehlevi's family, and same justice seeking that Mr. Ismailion has managed to bring people to the streets, and Kurdistan as well. They have influential parties. We cannot repeat the same bad things being said about certain parties in Kurdistan. I'm wearing this rainbow badge because this represents the LGBT community and represents Kian Pir Falak. This is representing the diversity in Iran. I extend my hand of friendship and unity to all media outlets, that you are not just media. You see, when George Floyd was killed, media outlets took side. They did not remain silent. The side of truth is Iran, is our Iran. What did the people of Iran say? No, the people of Iran did not say that if Mr. Pehlevi is here, there will be dictatorship. The people of Iran shouted from across regions. They only shouted against the Islamic Republic. We should not be afraid of repeating each other's names. Put aside your differences. People, whoever follows each and every one of us, let's hug each other. And I have learned so much from these people that in order to get past the Islamic Republic, we should not be afraid. We should hug each other, hold each other's hands, and get past the Islamic Republic. What can I say after her? Very briefly, I should say why I joined this group, because I wanted to join this rainbow of diversity of Kian Pir Falak. The voice of the people of Iran was important for me.
Many of our objectives are not necessarily political. Look at Ali Dai, Volia Ghafouri, Maulavi Abdul Hamid, or Jafar Panahi and Muhammad Rasulov. There are various classes of society that want to be a part of this movement.
An iron-fisted moderator, because we have 6 more questions in about 7 minutes. So what I'd like to do is actually allow those who've flown from far away we'll bunch some questions together, and then we can give them to the speakers as a final. Let me start with Nازنین Ansari.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here. After 43 years, we're all here. And it's been 5 months after the murder of Mahsa Jina. And with all the other killings and oppression, this revolution has continued. How do you see the main factor behind this revolution? And Mr. Pehlevi, you have said, you have spoken about the importance of unity among various groups. Can you tell us a little bit about the state of these groups?
I just want to say that millions of Iranians right now are jubilant seeing you side by side in unity. We love each and every one of you for the dedication, perseverance, hard work that you've put in. What unites you all is your love for Iran and your hamvatans, and we all feel it, and your real belief in woman life freedom. We have a lot of brilliant individuals and groups in the diaspora with incredible skills that have been working hard, organizing, planning out a roadmap for the path ahead. My question is, are you going to be formally coming together in the form of a Solidarity Council? And when? Do you already have the beginnings of a roadmap? And when can you meet these other groups and subject matter experts so they can present their ideas, projects, and how they can best serve you and the movement going forward?
Thank you. We have a Georgetown student, Bahar. Is she here? Yeah, please.
Yes, we need young generation.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask two quick questions. I'll do the first one in English because it's more international. Our dictators are very united, from Putin to Assad to Khamenei, and I'm wondering, do you have any plans to work with other opposition groups, such as the Assad opposition group, because they have an interest in the fall of the Islamic Republic for democracy and freedom? And my second question, I'll do it in Farsi because it's related to my generation.
As a 22-year-old Iranian, I am curious to know how you want to include young people in your in this process, not just in protests, because many of young people are in prisons. And how do you want to use their voice and include them in this process?
Since we're here in Washington, what realistically could the Biden administration do to support this? Nازنین, I know you were at the State Department a few months back. Have you seen any change or any good policies coming out of that meeting? And are you worried that the U.S. administration hasn't heard the united position from Iranian Americans on this subject?
Thank you. And final question to Ladan Salami from Independent Persian. Is she here? Please.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Pehlevi. My question is about the worries of the people of Iran, that today many people with different attitudes, with different mentalities, have come together. This is good. The worry is that if this unity does not come to fruition, this will disappoint the people. What do you think can be done to reduce the worries and increase this unity? And another question is that, do you think we will see another meeting of this kind?
Why don't we, if you can, I know there were many questions, but take 2 minutes each of you to try to respond to them, and then unfortunately we don't have the room any longer. Why don't you start, Hamajan?
If you allow me, I will answer Bahar's question. As far as other movements, we have the responsibility, all of us, those who are involved, to study the other movements and see what is going on, what has gone on in other movements, South Africa, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Czech Republic, and other countries. We must not repeat the mistakes of the others. This is very important. There is a Syrian writer, you pointed to Syria. This is, while the Iranian Revolution is in process, a Syrian writer points out the mistakes that they themselves made and others. There was another portion of it that was published yesterday. I believe it's very educational for all of us, because instead of he points to some place about the ups and downs of the revolutions that happen. Sometimes it's on a lower, and sometimes it's not on the high. That is when those who are fighting they'll be infighting and they'll attack each other. This is a mistake that we must not repeat. We must be careful that when there is a calm, we must not attack each other, and instead we must move towards solidarity. The other issue is life. The name of this revolution is Women, Life, Freedom, and many of the people have lost their dear loved ones. But that doesn't mean that life stops. This doesn't mean that those who are living together, listening to music, who are engaging in recreation, we mustn't attack them. The families of the justice seekers whom I have been in touch with over the past 3 years, we've been fighting shoulder to shoulder. We never have wanted unhappiness for the people, and that continues. Not everyone can be a 24-hour revolution. We cannot expect from this. We must let people live their lives, and at the time of the fight, we must be together with each other. And your generation, as I don't like to use this word of use, because it's not like that at all, and it's not like that at all in my view. My hope is to be alongside these youngsters to fight them, to destroy all these norms that have imprisoned so many generations in Iran. It is not easy to get to that, but I am hopeful that we can, as soon as possible, meet with with representatives of the Generation Z. To set these up. This is very important from within Iran. Fortunately, most of them are on social media, and as far as I can, I try to follow this up.
Dear Bahar, I have respect for your tears. Before I came here, I was so stressed when I was practicing to read this charter. Dear Hamid and Mr. Pehlevi were near me. I promised them that I would not cry in this meeting, but out of respect for your tears and young people like you, we need your power. I don't want to use the word use, as Mr. Ismailian said so bravely, because he is one of the families of the victims. He can say more courageously than other people that this is a revolution of life. We should not mourn for this revolution. And people, Mr. Aslani is here, the singer. You have been alongside this revolution. Mr. Singers like Gogush and Abi, please do not cancel your concerts. These concerts are actually for solidarity, for life, woman, life, freedom, because shutting down life is exactly what the regime wants. About the role of young people, I invite you, dear Bahar, that, as I said, with the help of opposition groups in Syria, Iraq, and Russia, the groups that we work together, I want to tell you something about a young person I know, Ammar. He is a man whose father was killed by Qasem Soleimani. His cousins were also killed by Qasem Soleimani, and many others like him, who were saying that they were distancing themselves from Iran because he said we were calling Soleimani a hero. But I told him that we weren't calling Soleimani a hero. It was NAYAC members who said so. We have a common enemy in the region, and that is Khamenei and the Islamic Republic. We cannot leave this place today without naming Afghanistan and the brave women of Afghanistan, our brothers in Syria, in Iraq, all of these people who are wounded by the corrupt regime of Khamenei, these are the people we're extending our hands of friendship. We can tell the world that the war in the region is I've talked about these wars, and now these wars have extended to the heart of Europe. The IRGC is sending UAVs, drones, to the heart of Europe to fight against Ukrainians. We are telling the world that if you do not unite against the Islamic Republic, you will have to face them in your countries. Thank you, Bahar, for being the voice of young people for Pejman Gholipur as well.
To answer the question, of course, I think many of us would have liked to see President Biden make a mention of Iran in his State of the Union address. But I will say, since I first met with the administration months ago now with Vice President Kamala Harris, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor, I've stayed in touch, and I think a number of really great things have come out of it. Of course, there was the co-convened ARIA Formula, UN Security Council ARIA Formula meeting that they co-convened, that I was fortunate enough to be able to speak at with Shireen Abadi, Nobel laureate Shireen Abadi. But of course, after that, there are a number of things. There was a UN Human Rights Council session that led to the fact-finding mission. There was a huge group effort in the diaspora to remove the Islamic Republic from the UN Commission on the Status of Women, which was also championed by the Vice President. But of course, she heeded the calls from inside Iran, which is so important to us, because every message that we deliver the administration comes directly from Iran. This is not something that the Vice President simply said, okay, well, let's just kick out the Islamic Republic out of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. It was absolutely women's rights defenders in Iran whose calls were heeded. So I think those things are symbolic and very important, and I think more policy is coming out of Congress, which we can support, such as the MASA Act. And in my meetings with lawmakers, I have been encouraged that the tide is shifting away from support and normalization of the Islamic Republic. And hopefully what we'll see is a shift from the nuclear file to human rights, a human rights-focused policy on Iran.
Consider, friends, that perhaps some of the questions you have we may be able to answer, but in reality, most of the questions you have are addressed to people who know how to set up the mechanisms to set these things up. They can answer your questions more accurately. We are not a leadership council. We are going to help to form such a council, and most of the groups and currents and even that coalition that you expected can form that, and so that they can distribute the responsibilities, everything that will help this process of overthrow of the regime and entering the phase of transition. So know that as far as we can, we will be as transparent as far as possible that you had wanted. But know that many of these appropriate questions that you're raising, be patient until this process follows its natural course. Of course, there is a deadline. Of course, many of these groups feel a deadline because of what came, the spark that set off this revolution. But all of us know that with every day that passes, how much damage is inflicted on our country, how much the water crisis is how much harm is causing, how it can be a greater problem than social issues. How can the world know that a different Iran and the danger of Islamic radicalism or the nuclear threat, which the JCPOA revolves around more, the role that the Islamic Republic plays in terms of helping the Russians repress the people of Ukraine, and in terms of energy, that Iran can provide energy for Europe. How can we solve the problem of water? How can we get help from international specialists? Contrary to Ahmadinejad, who wanted Israel to not exist, we want to use the best Israeli specialists in Iran so that they can help us solve the problem. How can we attract foreign investment in Iran in terms of moving the economic wheel? We have to look at the areas that have suffered the greatest harm, from Balochistan to Kurdistan, where there is no industry. What industries can we form there so that they can create jobs? How can we, more than ever, move towards a non-oil economy? How can we promote tourism? And many other ideas. This is the work of specialists. That's where they will give you a plan, they will give you a project, they will be in touch with our fellow countrymen, they will use social media, the youth of the country, whether whether within or outside, they can give views, they can contribute. We must reach that phase. Organization and institutions. And we are moving towards that, and that's where I say that the diaspora, especially, which has the ability to speak freely, has more financial resources, they should be supporting this movement. We don't expect, before this problem, these things are offered, that you can do anything else. But I know and I've heard, and not only me but others have heard, that they're waiting for this to be created sooner rather than later, so that they know how and where they can help. Know that all of this is constantly under discussion, especially with activists inside the country in various areas, especially in the academic realm. And let me tell you, and I've said this before, and we agree, most of the people who fill the vacuum in Iran are actually within Iran. It's the technocratic and bureaucratic field within Iran itself, whether it's in government or the private sector. They are the ones who are filling this vacuum. And there are others overseas who can help in terms of ideas, technology, or investment. All of this will go back to a scenario where we can present to the world, and they can see the components. That's when our work will be made easier. Now, whether we go to the Munich Security Conference or when Nازنین Beniadi goes to the UN, sometimes we might go together, sometimes we might go individually, but know that this is our main message to the world and to the people. Where as soon as we can get to the end of this charter, again depending on within Iran, the basic points of our agreement have been decided on, and this requires joint effort, collective effort, and of course division of labor, and we will get there. Thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking these extraordinary leaders, their passion, their commitment, and all that they represent. She's hugging, carrying out the instructions. Our program is concluded, but our journey continues in all the ways you've heard discussed today, and in all the ways each of us will join that journey. It is my pleasure to invite all of you to stay for tea and for snacks. Continue the camaraderie. We're going to ask that you stay in your seats until our leaders can leave. And let me just add that it takes a village to mount a program like this. This has had thousands of pieces to it. And let me just quickly thank the people who played prominent roles. I want to thank our team leader, Ali Smith, Lana Kwan, Mary Haynes, Jackson Manor, Sarah Rutherford, Jess Keller, Helen Rocker, Anna Lashavi, Lexi Gopin, Ruth McBain, Lydia Sullivan, Russell Gordon. We don't usually, you see this on a reel, but I have to do it this way. I want to thank SIS Global Solutions for their work, Percy Media for their translation, Pantiha Razovi, who designed this extraordinary graphic, and she's here in the room. And the 35 other volunteers I haven't named, but they all were very grateful to each and every one of them. So please let our leaders leave, and thank you all for coming and ever onward.
Thank you so much.
مرسی از همتون که اومدین. دمتون گرم. به جای پنجه بر صورت هم کشیدن، پنجه ها رو میکشیم به سمت دیکتاتور. دمتون گرم که اومدین. مرسی.